Why don't you sit down and tell me what appears to be the problem? I have another 4 questions for Consult the Doctor, and I thought the first one was a very pragmatic and good one. I like to use italic nibs, but I don't like the Lamy Safari grip. Are there round grip Lamys that use these nibs? Yeah, there actually are a couple of Lamy pens that use the Safari nibs. Safari nibs are very nice because they're easily interchangeable and they're not too expensive, but the triangular faceted grip is certainly not a type of grip that works for everyone. So I have here a Lamy Studio, and the Studio is a little bit more expensive than the Safari, but if you buy it with a stainless steel nib as opposed to a gold nib, it doesn't have to be super expensive, and as you can see, they use the exact same nibs that the Safari uses. So you might find it interesting to check out these. They come in a whole bunch of colors as well, different finishes, so I would certainly have a look at those. All right, question number 2. Will permanent inks stain more? This is there was a whole list of things they could stain: pens, ink windows, converters, etc. I think it depends a little bit on the specific ink you use. Different brands, for example, may be a bit more prone to it than others. But having said so, in my experience, yes, they are certainly more intense when it comes to maintenance of pens, and yes, there could be staining. I have never personally had anything be stained by iron gall ink, but iron gall ink can lead to other problems. Some people report that ink makes their feeds clog, or it even melts down feeds. I've certainly never experienced that, but I would be just careful. Unfortunately, there is a downside to every single thing you can do in life. So one of the downsides to using permanent archival quality inks is that your pens may stain. That's true. So maybe use them with caution, but then clean your pens well. And that was the other part of the question. I think if you clean the pens very well, you don't let inks sit in your pen for 10 years, then it's probably going to be okay. But at the end of the day, that pen hygiene is an important aspect of this. Okay. The third question, I also thought was kind of a fun one. It's about me, but I'll be brief. Is, do you still think in Dutch or in English? And that the obnoxious answer is it depends. It really depends on what I am doing. If I'm speaking to Dutch friends or family, typically online, then I do think in Dutch. But when I speak in English, like I'm doing now, then I find that more and more I think in English. And I actually find it harder to then think in Dutch, because that means I have to sort of translate the Dutch in my brain into English coming out of my mouth. And that leads to weird things, because word order is a little different in the two languages. Grammar is obviously different. So that can actually make it harder, because then you get this sort of translated Dutch coming out as English, which certainly occasionally happens. I'm not a native speaker of English after all. But I do think that's there. But then it's easier to just try to think in English in the first place. Okay. I kind of had 2 more questions, and because we're doing pretty well on time, because these were fairly straightforward questions, how about we do a bonus question? There are 2. I'll start with the one that I think most people find interesting, and then I'll end with the one that I think is maybe for a smaller crowd. So, writing down the time. What about the psychology of looking for the best ... like looking for the best pen or the best ink? What can you say about that? Well, I have addressed something similar in the past, and I think there is a lot to be said about that. I think there is pretty good evidence that states that our behavior often can be classified as one of two things. Either we are exploring or we are exploiting. And that is not a value judgment. All that means is either you're trying out all sorts of different things and then you are exploring, or you are exploiting. And that means that you stick to one thing and then use that a lot. A classic example of that is if you are an animal that's foraging and looking for food, either you can stay in an area where you know there is a lot of food, but of course you run the risk that one day there's no food, or that there is another area out there that actually offers more food, and then you should really explore and see what new areas are out there, and then if you find a better area than where you were originally, then you can start to exploit that new area that you have now explored. And a part of my PhD research looked at a brain area that is strongly involved in that can kind of work in two modes, and if it works in one mode, then animals are exploring, and if it works in the other mode, then animals are exploiting. And I think that is a fairly apt way of thinking about something like fountain pens too. I have certainly experienced, and based on what I read online, a lot of people have experienced something similar, that as they start out, they find themselves exploring a lot. And I mean, how could you not? You may want to try different nib materials, or different filling systems, or pen materials, or different inks maybe, something like that. And that is real explorative behavior. But then, at some point, when you kind of find out what it is you like, pen-wise, you can start to really exploit that type of pen, whether that's a pen material or a nib type or a brand that you really like or ink brands that you really like, etc. But a lot of people find what they like and then they kind of latch onto that, and then they continue with that. And some people never reach that stage. They just keep buying things, keep exploring things, keep trying new things. And that's fine too. One is not better than the other. It's just two different ways of approaching things. So that's one thing, and that is there is one neuromodulator, so one sort of signaling chemical in the brain that we really associate with this, and that's noradrenaline. But then there is another one that I think also comes into play, and that's dopamine. Whenever you do something that is exciting to you, a burst of dopamine is released in your brain. And I think that when it comes to trying something new, like a new pen or something, you get that initial burst of dopamine. And that's addictive, by the way, so that might be a reason why people keep buying new stuff and keep trying new stuff. Having said that, I also think that is a very short, evanescent type thing. That just, it's a quick feeling that something is nice and then you like that, but then it also passes. This is, I think, one of the leading causes of something like retail therapy working for a lot of people. You feel bad, you buy something, and it gives you this quick rush of, oh, that's nice. But then pretty quickly that also subsides again, and you have to do that thing again to get that same burst. And I think that, for me, I think those are important cognitive neuroscientific principles behind the question that was asked. From a more sort of hardcore psychological viewpoint, I think this is very much an issue of human nature. We want to always try to find the best thing, the thing that works best for us. And that involves fountain pens as well. You try different things and you want to find the smoothest or the wettest or the largest capacity fountain pen that you could possibly find. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's just something that we do. And that's it. So that's what I would say as to that question. The final, I hope that was a somewhat sensible answer. The final question, the bonus question, is how do you stay motivated doing reviews? And I've touched on these kinds of topics before, so I'll try to be brief. But it stays motivating because I still have fun, more fun with some pens than with other pens. Some pens I find inherently more interesting to review than others. I think that's pretty normal. Some things match your style or interest more than other things. And beyond that, there is also a generally positive response from the pen community, which certainly helps. That is offset by there also is a fairly negative response from other members in the pen community. And that can be difficult. If you've done something like this for a long period of time, and I have, because it was January 2011 that I started doing this sort of stuff, a lot of time has passed, and yet I still find it motivating. I still find it fun to do, and the positives certainly outweigh the negatives. There will be a day that will no longer be the case. It is absolutely certainly for me the case that there will be a day that the negativity will start to outweigh the positivity, and in that day I will stop doing fountain pen reviews. Maybe I'll find something else to do online, but probably I won't. And that's just how it is. So it stays motivating as long as you can focus on the positive and the nice aspects of it. It gets harder once you start to focus on the negative aspects. And certainly if there are periods when there is a lot of negativity coming out of the fountain pen community, because it is the fountain pen community that generates that, it's not random strangers, that is harder and is a lot less motivating. So I would certainly say that is, that's how it works. There are positive aspects, there are negative aspects, and as long as they are balanced out in favor of one, things will be okay. That's it. 11 minutes. I thought I was going to talk much longer about that, but I don't want to bore you. So if you have any questions, please leave them below, and I will get to them. Maybe not in the exact next episode, but at some point, I'll get through them. I hope this was useful, and I'm glad to see you later. Bye!